California is still reeling from deadly wildfires, but there is hope that rain could bring much needed relief to the northern half of the state. But that rain could also bring potential mudslides that could complicate the search for the remains of victims. The Camp Fire killed dozens of people. Nearly 1,000 more are still unaccounted for. Meg Oliver has the latest.
Crews are scouring this scorched landscape to recover DNA and identify the dead before the rain moves in.
It's heavily, ash and soot, and when the water turns, touches that, it kind of turns to sediment. So anything that we have or potentially have, is going to be further buried and entombed by that.
Search teams are trying to find bathtubs or mattresses, likely places people would take cover when the fire left them no way to escape. With more than 40,000 people forced to flee the Camp Fire, there are close to 1,000 people still unaccounted for.
Could that list be inflated?
That list is subject to fluctuation, both up or down, as new information and data comes in.
That's because the sheriff says there are duplicate names on the list, people who don't know they're on it, and reunions that haven't been reported. As investigators dig into the cause of the Camp Fire, Pacific Gas and Electric has confirmed it had 2 power line failures the day the fire ignited. But in a statement, the utility says in determining a public safety power shutoff, it considers multiple factors, including strong winds, very low humidity levels, and critically dry vegetation. The forecasted conditions didn't meet the criteria.
Careful.
Back here at the recovery effort, devastating news for 30-year-old Chardonnay Telly. Last week, CBS News was with her as she tried to locate her father, Richard Brown. She had not heard from him since the fire struck.
He's been through war and so many things, and there's a possibility he could have made it through this.
The remains of Chardonnay's dad have now been found and identified. She says she doesn't think her father made it very far from home.
And Meg Oliver joins us now from Paradise, California. Meg, thank you so much for your excellent reporting there on the scene. Tell us, where are you? What are you seeing where you're at right now?
Paula, it's just pure devastation across the area. I'm standing in the middle of a neighborhood that burned to the ground. As you can see behind me, there's just an oven that's standing here. There's just piles of metal. There's a bed that is twisted apart. There's mangled coils of a mattress that have just melted over the mattress frame here. And these scenes, here's a big air conditioning unit. These scenes just stretch for miles everywhere you go. And we've heard it time and time again as we've been reporting on the aftermath that this scene looks like a war zone, and I can't stress that enough because everywhere you go, it is just one nightmare after another.
A war zone indeed. You've been on the ground there for a few days. In your reporting, have you learned of anything that the public can do to help officials search for those who are currently unaccounted for?
Such a good question, Paula, because as we know, there are nearly 900 people still accounted for. The sheriff, I talked to him again today, and he told me he wants people to check this list, check it twice. There are so many duplicate names on the list. There are people that reported people missing, they were reunited, and then they didn't call back. He even told me that there are several people on this list that they discovered had died several years ago. So this list is not accurate, and the good news is they are making progress and they are crossing off hundreds of people's names a day. But again, he's asking people to go online and check the list.
Did he tell you anything about how hard it's going to be to identify these remains going forward?
Extremely difficult. We spent a lot of time today shadowing a search and rescue crew as they were combing through this debris. And one gentleman told me that basically the only thing that they are finding besides some human remains are diamonds. They're the only thing that's not melted all the way down to the core. And they are taking those diamonds, putting them in bags, marking down the address if they can identify the address. And they're hoping to reunite some of these valuables with people who have virtually lost everything. But in terms of identifying the remains, this is such a painstaking process. And we have heard from an anthropologist who is working on the forensic efforts here that it is going to be nearly impossible to identify some of the remains, and other remains will never be recovered.
That's unbelievable. Now, you're standing in what used to be someone's home. We're just a few days away from Thanksgiving. Is there any short-term relief coming to those who have lost their homes?
I know it is so sad that I'm standing in the middle of somebody's home, isn't it? I mean, when you look behind me, you see these fireplaces, and there's another one standing over there. And you just think, as we approach this holiday weekend, there are thousands of people that were forced to evacuate. And just wrap your head around this, Paula. 97 homes were destroyed. So we talked to FEMA today. They said they are working to secure long-term housing. There are shelters open for people. Hundreds of people are also living in tent cities. But at this point, it's highly unlikely that any of the trailers for long-term housing will arrive here before the holidays.
Meg Oliver, thank you so much for your outstanding reporting there on the ground.
Thanks.